Zombies, a pop culture staple along with having always been one of my favorites when I was younger and still to this day, with Call of Duty World at War introducing me to the dead and I Am Legend giving me an interest in the post-apocalyptic genre after seeing the beautiful Shelby GT 500. And of course, who can forget the classic Shaun of the Dead.
Get higher, baby. Get higher, girl.
So, to nobody's surprise, I was one of the millions that watched The Walking Dead when it premiered all the way back in 2010. Damn, I'm feeling pretty old now. Now, I know that the show had a pretty big fall off, and to me personally, it got repetitive, complacent, and downright lazy at times. However, I did throughout the years try to go back and watch it, and I stopped after season 7 and went back from time to time to see if the show got any better and or finished, but I just couldn't. It wasn't until I watched a video by the Friendly Space Ninja that I was like, you know what? Let's go back and watch the show and the whole series again because I'm getting that itch. And I'll link that video down below in the description because watch it. It's a fantastic video summing up all my thoughts pretty much on the series. So I ordered the Blu-rays for the whole entire show because I'm old school, don't judge me, and sat down to begin watching. Then something very, very strange happened. As I began my journey through the zombie apocalypse again, it was downright staggering seeing the characters, the stark contrast between them as well. The earlier seasons especially showed me as well as reminded me how good this show really was, how grounded as well as seriously the show took itself in the earlier stages. Now, I will admit, I didn't finish the show. I stopped after finishing up season 8 because of how bad season 8 was and how much of a drag it was to get through. For me, plus, it just wasn't entertaining anymore. But as I ejected the disc out of my Blu ray player, I realized that for me personally, I couldn't shake the feeling and weight of the first 2 seasons the show had on me. There was something about the earlier era of The Walking Dead that I missed so much, and I thought I'd just share some of those thoughts with you and run through why some of these seasons were so enjoyable. So without further ado, sit back, relax, grab a drink, get a snack, as we go through the 2 most underappreciated seasons of The Walking Dead. Season 1 of The Walking Dead, although only consisting of 6 episodes, is simply outstanding. Frank Darabont and his team were tasked on bringing Robert Kirkman's comic to life, and Frank had quite the resume, directing projects such as The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. AMC gave the green light on producing the series, but only giving it 6 episodes to test the waters with audiences, and well, it sorta succeeded. And it all premiered on October 31st, 2010. On that day, just over 14 years ago, nearly 5.5 million viewers tuned into the pilot episode of The Walking Dead, AMC's most viewed premiere at the time. The episode's name was Days Gone By, and critics and viewers alike praised the direction the show was heading for, with its subtle tones and dark atmosphere. Just a quick side note as well, to me the pilot of The Walking Dead is my favorite pilot episode of all time. It showcases how a show should not only be introduced by not only shocking the viewer, but throwing them in the passenger seat and buckling them in. The only other pilots I can say that match how good the opening of this show is probably Game of Thrones, and I'm sure someone down below will mention their favorites like The Sopranos or The Wire, which is fine, but hey, I warned you, I'll be throwing my opinions out there. Not only is it very rare to captivate an audience on your first episode of a brand new series, but it is incredibly difficult. The actors and writers did a fantastic job opening up this post-apocalyptic world that immediately immerses you. The cast also does a great job, and keep in mind too, this is where some of these actors got their big breaks. Andrew Lincoln, who plays Rick, shows not only his acting prowess during the short first season, but also shows that he can be a main lead in a show and carry the production. Of course, a cast is not complete if you don't have other characters to help pick up your story. John Bernthal, who is one of my favorite actors, plays Shane, Rick's partner in the show, who has his back and will always protect Rick and his family.
Sometimes foreshadowing is relatively obvious.
Sarah Wayne Callis, who plays Lori, Norman Reedus, who plays Daryl. You get it. There's a huge talented roster at the start of this show who come together to deliver an amazing season. The first season follows Rick Grimes, a sheriff who was involved in a shooting and subsequently put into a coma from the injury. And when he wakes up, he is in a hospital where he slowly realizes the world he once knew is no more. And I personally love how Andrew Lincoln portrays Rick here, showing not only fear, but he has a mental breakdown in the first part of the episode of what he is actually seeing. I mean, can you simply imagine how terrifying this situation would be if it happened to you? Lucky enough, Rick is met by Morgan and his son Dwayne, who essentially saves Rick's life. I don't know why a simple shovel gag always gets me. It might have been from watching too many Looney Tunes growing up, but damn, man, the shovel hit was just so brutal. Morgan then explains to Rick what the world has come to, giving him the basics on what he needs to know to survive. Now, like I said before, the first season really locks in the viewer because after Morgan and Rick go their separate ways, we really start to see more of the world building. And I love, absolutely love, how the sets of The Walking Dead are just eerily quiet and so peaceful in the early seasons, but at a moment's notice can be interrupted by danger. There's something so comforting and familiar about the silence between the shots that illustrate how a situation like this would be, and it can be terrifying. Rick eventually comes across other survivors in the city, like Glenn, who is played by Steve Ewan, who goes on to voice Mark Grayson in Invincible. I just thought that was a fun fact. I'm sorry.
I don't care if I live a fucking million years. This is my home, and I won't let you destroy it.
Oh, okay. How about this? Because when I need a job done, I get someone with a job to do that job.
After running across survivors while searching for his family, lo and behold, he is reunited with them when he is brought back to their camp, which is extremely well done, by the way. The rest of the season builds on the camp that Rick finds and the struggles that the group endures. We also get a very big plot point that Shane, Rick's partner, and Lori, Rick's wife, have been doing some of the nasty while they thought Rick was dead. Surely this won't boil over. Anyways, the last episode of season 1, we learn that the CDC is not a safe haven, and in fact, the doctor at the CDC tells Rick before leaving that they are all infected. If a person dies and is not shot or stabbed in the head that disrupts the brain, they reanimate and come back as the undead. It's a great twist that I personally find interesting because it does give a reason to why you see so many walkers throughout the series. And fun fact too, the walkers in season 1 actually show intelligence too. Like they use a rock to break a window, stalking their prey. And of course, the creepiest part is remembering where they lived, which happens to Morgan's wife. What happened to this? Supposedly different showrunners didn't keep this idea, but man, did I wish they had, because there is just something way more unsettling about the walkers in season 1 than anything else. The first season, even though short, is by no means brief. It left viewers wanting more, and when I rewatched it for the first time in over a decade, I was reminded why I fell in love with this show. It's an introductory season that would soon dominate everyone's Sunday night's television schedule and have millions of fans eager for more. By the end of the first season of The Walking Dead, viewership was certifying that AMC had a hit on their hands, and to nobody's surprise, was greenlit for a season 2. But there was just one problem. AMC decided that they weren't going to give Frank Darabont and his team a bigger budget to work with, and instead demand twice as many episodes from them. It was unfair and quite frankly the stupidest thing AMC could have asked for, after damn well knowing this was going to be a huge hit. Unfortunately, Frank Darabont was fired from the show due to AMC wanting to cut the budget, but don't worry, the man got a nice confidential settlement in a lawsuit for future royalties of the show after AMC failed to pay him their agreed upon settlement. After all said and done, the mood around the cast changed during this time, and Frank, before he got fired, wrote the first 2 episodes of the season. However, is no longer credited for writing after that, because a different showrunner took over by the name of Glenn Mazara. But even after all this transpired, Season 2 premiered on October 16th, 2011.
Hey! You move, shithead! Come on, get us there! How far? How far?
That way! Hey, Herschel! Talk to Herschel, he'll help your boy!
The second season of The Walking Dead is very hit or miss for a lot of people, and I mean that. Talk to anyone who watched this show or is a fan, and you will give very different responses, especially for that time. You see, Season 2 for a lot of people is a drama season, where nothing really happens, which is totally false by the way. When I was rewatching this season, I actually forgot how good it actually was. I love the slower pacing after the group is trying to find its bearings in a world surrounded by the dead. This season really does focus on character building, and I personally love it for it. Yes, it's slow, and I understand people for not liking it. However, this was the season that solidified Jon Bernthal as one of my favorite actors, because the way he portrays Shane's descent into madness is one of the best performances I have seen on television. This, along with new characters such as Herschel, Maggie, and Beth, easily blending into and adding to the already great cast. Season 2 mainly takes place on Herschel's farm after Carl is shot by Otis in a hunting accident. Rick and Shane, as well as Otis, rush back to a place Otis says they can go, which happens to be, obviously, the farm. Introducing Herschel along with his daughters to the cast of characters, we learn that Herschel can save Carl, but will have to go and get supplies. And this is where the yarn starts to unravel very fast. You see, to me the farm arc is so captivating because you're seeing these characters and how they're dealing with not only themselves, but the situations that develop around them. Along with the mental health, isolation, and a changing world, the narrative here is focused and has this emotional weight that is very hard to describe. The one thing for sure is that you definitely don't get this type of writing in the later seasons because this truly was when the early era of The Walking Dead died. I mean seriously, if you take a look at all that boils around this season with Shane deciding to sacrifice Otis to get away, Dale, who's an awesome character by the way, who is now suspicious of Shane, then we learn that Glenn is running errands for the group, that Lori is asking for certain supplies, which leads Glenn to finding out Lori is pregnant, which is possibly not Rick's baby, but Shane's.
Oh yeah, this just keeps getting better and better.
On top of all this, after everything that has happened, Glenn ends up getting together with Herschel's daughter Maggie, which I was very happy for at the time. Until one night when they want to get together, Glenn recommends the barn, which so happens to be filled with walkers. If you can't tell by now how the writing for the earlier seasons, it's just fantastic. It just keeps you hooked in.
So, the barn's full of walkers.
Shane, of course, upon finding this out, goes absolutely ballistic, realizing it's not safe to stay here, and well, proceeds to take things under his control, with a scene that has been used in countless memes that really never gets old.
What he said? What he said?
Overall, this scene has a lot of arcs that come together to culminate into making it an understated part of the show. Everything from Sophia being missing, then found in the barn, to Shane and Rick's straining friendship, it's all laying the groundwork for how the show will proceed. And everything comes to a head on one of my not only favorite episodes of the show, but one of my favorite TV episodes of all time, called 18 Miles Out.
Thought we were going further. We are. 18 miles out.
After capturing a prisoner named Randall, the group does not know how to proceed. Should they kill him or risk letting him go to bring back his people? Rick recommends dropping him off far away from the farm. Rick uses this time to tell Shane that he knows about him and Lori, and he needs to not only back off, but let it go. After getting back in the car, they find a spot to drop off Randall, but just as they're about to leave, Randall says something that stops both Rick and Shane in their tracks.
I lost her like you lost people. I went to school with Maggie, for God's sake. Went to church, rode the bench on varsity baseball.
You went to school with Maggie? You go to school with Mag.
What then happens is one of the best fights in the series, with Shane and Rick going toe-to-toe in a battle of survival where these supposed friends have reached a boiling point that you just cannot come back from.
Acting like you know the way ahead, like you know the rules. There are no rules, man. We're lost.
No, man. I know exactly where I am.
You don't know shit anymore.
You can do it, man.
It's my call,
I
man.
don't think you can keep them safe.
You see, Season 2, even though most people I knew at the time criticized it for being its slow pacing or lack of events, didn't stick around to see the season's final conclusion with an amazing ending. I don't want you for a second to think I don't appreciate Seasons 3 and 4 of The Walking Dead because, well, I do, and upon rewatching them, I could argue that I enjoyed them more on a second time around. But, just like I said in the beginning, the more I kept watching, nothing to me really reached that earlier height of the show. Yes, Season 3 had some great moments with the introduction of the governor. There was some reminders in even Season 4 where Daryl and Beth are trying their best to outrun a herd, which to me has to be the most terrifying shot and intro sequence in the whole series. The way the thunderstorm off in the distance is closing in, just like the herd that's coming their way, just for them to realize there's nowhere left to run and they have to get into a trunk of an abandoned car. It is without a doubt one of my favorite scenes in the show and in zombie media. Look, we all know the longer we went on with The Walking Dead, the more the show became repetitive, the writing grew frustrated, and the character deaths weren't as big of a deal or they had fake out deaths, and of course, plot armor all around, with the now zombies not even being as big of a threat as what they used to be. Hundreds and thousands of people falling off and refusing to continue the show, with each of them having their own reasons. AMC's absolute must-watch show in the early 2010s lost all of its momentum as well as viewership and is nowhere near the shape of what it used to be, but somehow keeps on staying alive and moving forward. Which is ironic because, this is a show about zombies, and somehow this show now is just outlasting my damn patience on when the writers can just come together and just say, you know what? I think it's time to just stop. In many ways, the first 2 seasons of The Walking Dead laid the groundwork for everything that followed, offering a nuanced exploration of survival, loss, and human relationship in the midst of an apocalyptic world. These early seasons focused on the internal struggles of the characters, creating a tense atmosphere of emotional depth and moral complexity that often gets overshadowed by the more action-driven and completely downright crazy conflicts of later seasons. The slow burn pacing, the haunting portrayal of the collapse of society, and the intimate character moments made these first 2 seasons stand out as the most thematically rich and well-rounded of the series to me. While the show's massive popularity and expanding scope led to a shift in tone and a direction for which we all know now wasn't really the right direction, the careful, interesting storytelling of the earlier years remains the core of what made The Walking Dead resonate so deeply with so many people, including myself. Sadly, much of this early brilliance is underappreciated today. So yes, I am one of those people, if you haven't figured it out by now, that wish this show ended back when the group got to Alexandria. But, again, there was just something about the tight narrative and them striking a perfect balance of horror and drama that threw me in for the ride all those years ago. And for that, it will remain a constant favorite for me, as well as something I will always love to rewatch for years to come. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.